opus8phoenix.com. And we're investing in a very few select sectors where we have expertise. One of them is financial technologies or fintech. Another sector is marketing technology, which includes customer relationship management. We also do health technology investment, not biotech and pharma, but technologies that sort of help enable the delivery of healthcare services. So that could include anything from data to a whole host of services that could be offered to patients and doctors and providers. So that market is absolutely booming, especially now with COVID, more than ever before. So that's an area that our team has expertise in. We're only investing in USA, and most of our investments are going to be in pre-A and A round, seed round, pre-A and A. We will do some occasional B round and pre-IPO investing alongside of some other top tier investors. So as you can see on the next bullet, our check sizes are not large. They're 250,000 to $1 million, and we reserve an equivalent amount for follow-on investment. Our goal is not to lead investments. We're strictly a follower, so we will follow some of the larger investors. And why they would let us into the deal is because we add value to the portfolio companies through the network in our ecosystem. We have very strong and deep ecosystem of advisors, mentors, CEOs, investors, customers. We can bring customers to our portfolio companies, which is a little different than most investors can do. And 100% of our focus is on resilient founders. And we have that's a whole nother conversation, how we determine what is resilient, who is resilient, how we screen for resilience. And half of it is going to be allocated to underserved entrepreneurs, women, minorities, and immigrants. I think it's been proven, the research has been proven that companies started by women, minorities, and immigrants actually outperform companies that do not have those underserved communities on their team. So we're very excited about the opportunity to invest. If you have any good investment opportunities, let us know. We're happy to take a look. And you know, it's a very selective process, as you can imagine. We're guessing most venture funds are looking at 200 deals to write one check. We're probably looking at 70 to 100 deals to write one check. So we want to get our deal flow up, but we're very selective. As far as my background, basically I'm from New Jersey. My parents are immigrants from Asia. I basically have only had one real job ever. And for the most part, my parents are both entrepreneurs, and I became basically an entrepreneur by default. So I started a business. If you look at the last yellow bullet, my company wound up growing to be one of the top 10 largest privately held call center companies in the world, one of the largest in the US as well. And we sold to a public company, and then that company then sold to Xerox Corp, which is a large public company here in the US. And when I sold my company, we had about 80 million in revenue. And now I would say the revenue of the legacy business is around 2.5 billion. So maybe 30 times the size. And the work is split among Xerox and another public company called Conduent. But we have a lot of expertise and experience in the CRM call center BPO space. So some thoughts about entrepreneurship in this year, and apologies to those who were on last week, because some of the stuff will be repetitive. But I want to reiterate that despite everything that's going on in the world, we are very lucky to be in the USA. In fact, this goes for, I know most of you are not in the USA, but if you are in an environment which can help foster the achievement of your dreams, you're very lucky, because the opportunities are going to be pretty much unlimited, I think. Certainly for the foreseeable future, for the next 1 or even 2 generations, I think you're going to see a tremendous growth in technology, in the economy, in developing markets, because of all the dislocation that's going on. And I think that if you're savvy and smart and resilient and creative, and you're willing to, work really hard, I think there is no limit to what you can do. last week we talked a little bit about Silicon Valley and entrepreneurial ecosystems. So I think these are the five really, as I think about it, most important elements that would make a great entrepreneurial ecosystem. There's a lot of good ones. There are dozens of good entrepreneurial ecosystems around the world, but there's only a handful of truly outstanding ones. And I think that, we can take these one at a time. Capital availability is critical because if you're building a tech company or a product company, you need money to grow. This is not for a services economy, but for a product company economy. You do need capital. So having lots of capital is important to entrepreneurs because that's the fuel that gets you to where you got to go. Talent, critical, because again, when you're building a business, you need a few things, right? You need money and you need talent. So if you have ready talent in your ecosystem, then you are at a huge advantage. The culture of the area, which arguably is the most important. I think if you look at the great ecosystems around the world, they have a culture of success. They have a culture of positivity and openness and encouragement. They encourage entrepreneurship, and they have an open-mindedness that is, you don't find in other markets. Educational institutions is important as well. I mean, I'm sitting here in Cambridge, Mass, right next to at MIT, next to Harvard. It's a hotbed of. It's a reason why Boston and Cambridge is such a great ecosystem. Not quite at the Silicon Valley side, but certainly a top 5 in the United States. So having the base of institutions, you have research, you have inventions, you have government grants coming in, you have lots and lots of fantastic opportunities and people and professors and capital sort of mixing together in a big mixing bowl of innovation. And then I think the fifth bullet here is the ability to attract companies, talent, and money. So kind of like the rich getting richer, just getting more and more of the same. And what that does is it sort of has a positive flywheel effect. And what does it take to attract? I mean, obviously you need to have great school systems, not a lot of traffic, preferably affordable housing, safety, lots of sort of common sense things that would make someone want to relocate their family or raise a family in a particular market. With respect to political, economic, social unrest that's going on, I think the smart entrepreneurs are actually looking at this as an experiment, not as an experiment, but as a way to identify areas of opportunity. I think all good entrepreneurs are always looking for opportunities to capitalize on. Where are their needs? Where is there pain points that need to be solved? And there's a lot of that right now. And I really do believe the best time to start a business is today, right now. I don't think there's any benefit in waiting. There's never really a perfect time to start a business. If you look at the great business gurus of all time, Warren Buffett, J.D. Rockefeller, they want to capitalize on opportunity when there's a recession, when there's a depression. Amazon was created out of a recession. Uber, Airbnb, so many companies. The list is endless. How many companies were created in an environment of opportunity like we're in right now? So I think most people view change as a negative and they're afraid of it. But the best entrepreneurs that I know view change as an opportunity and they love it. So it's sort of like flipping the mindset a little bit, So that's sort of my macro view of entrepreneurship today. The impact of COVID, it's on. I know that you can probably go on the internet and find 1,000 articles on, what's hot, what's not, what's going on with COVID. But so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But clearly, COVID has caused the world to change, and as a result of all this change, it's a change the way we live, the way we work, the way we play, the way we raise our kids, the way we educate people. And what happens is really we're seeing the advancement of technology trends that are already been in place over the last 5 to 10 to 20 years are now fully accelerating. Digitization, everything's going digital. Mobile, everything's going mobile. Touchless, everything is going touchless. Virtual reality, e-commerce, all the conveniences of consumer and business life are now being accelerated at a rate that probably is 3 to 4x what it would have been had we not had COVID. And converse to that, the second bullet is the demise of old business models and demise of old ways of thinking has been accelerated as well, because it has exposed weaknesses. And you're seeing bankruptcies now. You're seeing, I mean, companies that kind of really can't help it, like some retailers and hospitality and travel companies. It's not their kind of fault, but you're looking at, you know, weaknesses in other companies that that are being highlighted. So COVID has accentuated opportunities and trends that are already in place, and it's also accentuated the decline of companies that just weren't performing. And I think on the third bullet is critical, especially for you guys, since you're all entrepreneurs, is this will be the possibly the greatest time in your lifetime to find great talent. There's a lot of talent out there around the world, not just here in the US. You have the ability now to hire people from around the world. You have the ability to find tremendous talent locally and regionally that is being dislodged or dislocated from existing legacy jobs. And the companies I'm involved in, I'm invested in, are viewing this as a tremendous opportunity to find great people. Because I think talent shortage over the last 3 to 5 years post '08 has been a big barrier to growth for a lot of companies I'm involved with here in the States. And now with COVID, the job markets have loosened up. So it's a lot more fluid, and good employers have a great opportunity to hire great people. COVID is forcing companies to pivot. It's forcing people to pivot, families to pivot. So what that means is there's a lot of experimentation. People are adapting, they're testing things. Something that works, they stick with. If it doesn't work, they'll try something else. And in terms of companies and businesses, the internationalization, because of things like Zoom, like I'm able to talk to you guys in Russia from here in the US. I know we could always do that before, but now it's it's a mainstream medium. It's a mainstream way of communicating, and therefore I'm able to eventually we'll be able to transact commerce internationally using Zoom as easily as I did 10 years ago when I had to get on a plane and fly to Beijing or something, you know? So I think that companies that are able to figure out by pivoting, you know, where to go are going to be at a huge advantage. And obviously with the next bullet, you know, you're seeing unprecedented worldwide collaboration to find cures, to find ways to mitigate this virus. And that's going to trickle down to everything. Anytime we have any kind of disease, there's going to be better sharing of information. The silos are breaking down. Scientists are cooperating with each other. Governments are cooperating with each other, and so on. With respect to for you guys, for the entrepreneurs, you know, Wayne Gretzky, the great North American hockey player, you know, they asked him, how are you so good? How do you score so many goals? And he says, I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be. So that's you guys. Look for the dislocation in a marketplace and pain points, and figure out, are those pain points going to be gigantic, or are they just small? And if they're going to be gigantic, then bring your own unique proposition and expertise, technology, people, skills, whatever it is that you have that's unique. Bring that to the table to solve this massive, big pain point, and you'll be successful. With respect to Silicon Valley, yes, Silicon Valley is probably the top tech ecosystem in the world for these reasons. They have, as I mentioned earlier, the 5 big things. You know, number one, capital. They have tons of capital. They have lots of cashed out entrepreneurs who have recycled money and they've invested in it over and over again. Peter Thiel is an example. He made money with PayPal, then he started a hedge fund, he started a venture fund, he invested in Facebook, he invested in a variety of different companies. Palantir, which just went public recently. He's one example of many guys in the Valley who just basically are there, and they're continuing to deploy capital and recycle their successful exits into more capital. And then you have the top VC firms in the US there. Lots of talent going back to the 60s. You know, Silicon Valley's been a technology hotbed for 50 something years. and dating back to HP and the semiconductor days. So there's a culture of, hey, we got to create product, technology product. And, because of their ability to build businesses that have really become large and successful, those people spin off and they start businesses and they join other businesses. And basically it sort of becomes a very, the momentum just sort of builds on its own. The culture in Silicon Valley, for those of you who've been there, you know what I'm talking about. There's a nothing is impossible mentality. They're completely open and collaborative. Anyone will take a meeting with anyone. VCs will invest in college kids. Look at Facebook, right? That wouldn't happen here in Washington, where I'm at. That just doesn't work like that here in DC. They have top educational institutions. Now they have, from an attraction standpoint, great quality of life, tremendous weather. The issue with Silicon Valley, they do have a negative, and that is the cost of living there is very high. So that holds them back a little bit, I think. But now with COVID, you're seeing a lot of the employees in San Francisco and Silicon Valley actually moving to different areas because they can telework and use Zoom. And yes, they're taking a slight pay cut, but their cost of living is a lot lower. They can, for what they're paying for a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom apartment, they can now get a house, let's say. So I think this benefits Silicon Valley because that allows these great companies in the Valley to hire people from anywhere. Lots of role models. So you see this sort of successful progression of companies, and all young entrepreneurs, yourselves included, see, wow, these companies have all born and bred in Silicon Valley, and basically, you can do the same, right? And then there's tons of support in that market. There's 50 plus accelerators and incubators, all the top lawyers, accountants, bankers, investment bankers to support that whole service provider ecosystem. So, those are my thoughts on Silicon Valley, and sort of this would apply for any other tech hotbed, whether it's New York City, which is, believe it or not, quite a tech hotbed. Obviously, San Francisco, LA, also very hot. Austin, Texas, and around the world as well. So, you look at what they have in common, and I think that you see that that's pretty much what they have in common. So coming in from outside the Valley, we talked about this last week, I think the lessons here are you have to study the market, study the culture, and immerse yourself in the culture and in the community. That way you sort of know what's going on and you can kind of navigate a lot easier. When making connections, the good news for you is that the people in Silicon Valley tend to be open and they tend to be willing to chat about anything, So my advice there is it's a volume game. So you want to connect with a lot of people, be authentic. And also you want to develop thick skin because a lot of times you're going to get rejection. You're going to try to pitch your idea. You're going to try to get a job, whatever it is you're trying to do. I mean, like anywhere else, there's a lot of rejection. But I think persistence is something that if you're persistent and keep grinding, you'll wind up surprised. I think you'll get some good results in the Valley. For example, when I am out in the Valley, I just marvel at how easy it is to get meetings with people and how easy it is to get people excited about an idea. Whereas where I'm from here in Washington, D.C., people are a little more conservative, a little more skeptical, a little less open. So, I compare the two markets and I'm like, well, that's why, that's why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley, because people there have this mentality to help people. They'll take a meeting with you. And I think that when you're networking with people, it's very important to bring, a give first mentality, I call, or help first mentality, where you're actually bringing something to the table, you're paying something forward. People appreciate that. And I think that if you do it with authenticity, it's a tremendous way to make friends. So not just in business, but in anything. And then obviously you want to be somewhat strategic about the networking. You can identify who are the top mentors, top executives, top investors, top angels in a market, and just try to go and network to meet them. And then you can build your own network. I'm sure you're doing it in Russia or Europe or wherever you guys are. But you know, you want to have some mentors and centers of influence and friends and Sherpas and people that'll help you through. So it's like anything else. But I think you want to have a little bit of patience because stuff doesn't happen tomorrow, and just be very persistent. And if you have a give first mentality, I think you'll be in good shape. Raising money. You know, for entrepreneurs, how shall I say? It's very easy to get a term sheet from somebody who's interested in you and say, yes, I'm in, or I'll take your money. You know, I don't like that idea because for a lot of different reasons. But, you know, in my mind, even though you're desperate to raise money and you really need the capital, sometimes there's danger in jumping at the first offer. You're looking for a partner. So for those of you who are in a relationship or who are married, the analogy is extremely similar to finding investors. You want to have a partner, someone who will be there for you through thick and thin. With my purple bullets here, you know, the partner is not transactional. They're not just going to write a check and go away. They can actually write subsequent checks for you. That goes for wealthy angels as well as institutions. They understand the industry you're in. You don't want to have an investor necessarily who doesn't understand your industry, because there could be a lot of problems down the road. And also conversely, someone who understands your industry can really add value to you. You want a partner who's a successful investor. They have a good track record, so they know what it takes to help companies grow and how to mentor companies. If you're dealing with a first-time investor who's just looking to make a return, that's less you know, less of a priority in my mind. And then operations expertise is important, because investors who understand how businesses work and who understand how to make sales and how business models work tend to be the best kinds of investors, because they're focused on the actual business itself. In terms of raising money, something I see a lot with entrepreneurs, they don't raise enough money. They think they need, you know, X, say, you know, $500,000, when in reality they need $1 million. So if you think you need $500,000, you probably need $1 million. Why? Because everything takes twice as long and costs twice as much as you think. And whether it's developing a product, making sales, building a pipeline, everything takes longer than you think. Seldom do I see entrepreneurs hit their goals. I love it when they have big goals, and I want them to shoot for it. But just because of the way the market is and the way entrepreneurs tend to be a little over optimistic, you want to raise more, because if you don't raise enough, then you could wind up being stuck. You could be in a position where you don't have enough money, you're running out of cash, and you can't get to the next level, and then you wind up failing. So you do want to have more than you think you need. Now, you also don't want to go raise, if you need $500,000, which is really $1 million, you don't want to raise $3 million, because what are you going to do with the other two if you don't have a good use of funds for it? We saw that, you know, 20 years ago in the bubble. People were raising tons of money, and then they were using it to buy expensive cars for their salespeople and fancy furniture and fancy office space. They were wasting the money. So you don't want to raise too much. But the big flaw I see often, entrepreneurs just don't raise enough money. And then from an investor standpoint, like myself or others, what do we want? We want to see huge markets, great teams, and differentiation. So what's that mean? Huge market is, remember I talked earlier about dislocation and whether the market is big enough or not. The reason we want huge markets is because a rising tide lifts all boats. So even if you don't do great, the rising tide will lift you because the market is so big. We want great teams, because great teams understand what it takes. They work their butts off 24/7 nonstop to make sure it happens. They're coachable. They know how to pivot, and they know when to pivot. Because one thing's for sure, no matter what plan you have, you're going to be pivoting. The only question is, where are you going to pivot and when? But there's no doubt. So to me, great teams at an early stage and see opportunities and pivot their business when necessary. Differentiation is key, because That's your competitive advantage. That is what makes you better, different, stronger, faster, whatever than your competition. And you need to have a differentiator in order to win in the market. So investors want to know, what do you bring to the table that's truly unique and different, and can you execute on that? Venture capitalists, so institutional VCs, I think are the investors of last resort, which means they're very difficult to deal with. Initially, during the courting stage, they are great, but the minute you miss your first or second forecast, then they get less and less tolerant, less and less patient, and oftentimes an entrepreneur gets fired. So I don't know exactly what the percentage is in the industry, but the venture funds I'm aware of, they usually terminate between 40 and 70% of their entrepreneurs over time. So that's a question to ask when you're getting money. You know, what percent of your founders are still with you? So basically what I tell entrepreneurs is when you take venture capital money, you have a 50-50 chance to be fired in the next 5 years. So anyway, it's a pretty stark reality of life. But again, you know, this is not a game for the faint of heart. This is a hardcore game. It's war, basically. And you have to bring that mentality to the table. And the last piece is being persistent, because raising capital is like making sales. It's a process that requires diligence, preparation, tons of focus, and just continual rejection after rejection. So you have to be persistent, but there is a lot of money in the marketplace. If you believe in your product and you believe in your team and what you're doing, you will win down the road at some point. But you know, these stories that you hear about, you know, someone having a coffee at Starbucks and within a 10-minute meeting, they get a term sheet for $500,000. That stuff is Silicon Valley, the movie, the show, you know, that's Hollywood. That doesn't happen in real life. In real life it takes a lot of meetings, a lot of selling, and a lot of persistence and a lot of pain to get capital, but it's very worth it. Let's see, what else do we have here? Valuations. So, you know, valuations are a function of, you know, what industry are you in? You know, what market are you in? Where is your product? Is it an idea? Is it an MVP? Is it already tried and true? And then your team. And on the East Coast, for a team of, you know, for an idea, if you want to raise money, you could probably value that at $1 million, maybe 2 million pre-money. If you want to get some angels, if you have three people and an idea, right? But let's say you're beyond that a little bit. You're looking for seed money. So to get seed money on the East Coast, you have a team, you have a pre-MVP, minimum viable product. So you're not there yet where you have good product market fit, where your product matches the market and you have paying customers. You have a little bit of IP, some proof of concept. Then we're seeing seed rounds in the 3 to 5 million pre-money value. And on the West Coast, you can double that. And then by the time you're ready to do an A round a couple years later, you will have built and matured your product, right? You have a nice product roadmap. You have a great development team. You got sales coming in. You have, you know, revenue traction. You have pilot projects as well as happy customers. The product is working, relatively bug-free. Then you will raise 5 to 10 million and give up a quarter to a third of your company. And you know, the A round is coming mostly from institutional investors, institutional VCs. Some of your original angels will follow on, but you know, these are the two segments that the Phoenix Fund, my fund, is investing in. We will invest in seed and pre-A, and then we'll invest alongside larger investors on the A round. I can talk more about this in the question and answer period. I have a few more minutes of remarks, and then we can move to questions. Oops, what am I doing? There we go. So some resources. There are two global groups that you can check into. Founder Institute being one. They're based in Silicon Valley. Actually, these are both based in Silicon Valley. Founder Institute, they run cohorts of early stage and super early stage entrepreneurs around the world. So they have a chapter in DC. They have chapters all over the world. So check into them. And Startup Grind, which is less formal. They don't have classes or cohorts like Founder Institute, but they do events. So they have chapters around the world, dozens of chapters. They're headquartered in the Valley. They have 3 chapters in the Washington, D.C. area where I live. And basically, they do monthly events. Now they're virtual, but they have speakers. It's basically to get a group of local entrepreneurs together to sort of lend support to each other and to help each other. There's also lots of forums, right, for startups and entrepreneurs, whether they're general forums or specific forums specific to fintech maybe, or blockchain, cybersecurity, for example. But there's tons. I mean, I think depending on where you are, I'm sure your city has programs like this. And today with COVID, we have Zoom, so there's events. My events have people from all over the world dialing in, and the same goes for all these other guys. But Collision is a big one up in Canada. They're doing virtual events now. Web Summit in Lisbon, they used to be up in Ireland. Huge conference. My team used to go every year. Now they're doing virtual. TechCrunch Disrupt is going virtual as well. I think the last 2 bullets are more informational type resources. TechCrunch and Crunchbase are really good resources for finding out what's going on in tech. They have a US bias, so most of their research and information is US. And then for investor research, in terms of finding angel investors, we find AngelList is a great resource. Gust is another one, and obviously LinkedIn. So those are some resources that might help you. I think I'm almost done. So I like to end most of my talks to entrepreneurs with some advice. So I have a few things here. I think the first one is learn how to sell. So I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs that are enamored with finance, or they're enamored with their product or technology. And my attitude is, look, business is all about selling. Like, you don't have a real company until you get your first customer. In fact, you have nothing until you get your first customer. So you have to learn how to sell, and selling takes a lot, and whether you're selling shoes or magazines or selling stocks and bonds, you're developing skills that basically allow you to influence a third party to want to part with hard-earned cash to buy your product. And that's an incredibly valuable skill for life as well as in business, whether you're selling an idea to a coworker or to a boss, trying to sell yourself, trying to get a raise from your boss, or you're trying to get a job, or you're trying to convince your significant other to go to a movie or take a trip somewhere. It all requires some degree of selling. And I think an entrepreneur that knows how to sell is at a huge advantage over entrepreneurs that are purely technical or who don't have that ability to sell. With respect to the second bullet, product market fit. So you have to be successful, I've found, the most successful entrepreneurs that I know, they know what they're really, really good at, like what they're world class at. So not just what they're the best in their city at doing, but what they're best in the world at doing. And they also can figure out, where they can apply that skill to in the market. And then they can take that skill and build a business around it. So I've always found that the best entrepreneurs also, they started a business in an area where they themselves experienced a particular pain point. I'll give you an example. Like, my company does events. So why did we do this event? Start with Connectpreneur. We've done 52 events now. Over 20,000 people have attended over the last 9 years, because we didn't have good events in Washington. So we said, you know what? We don't have good events here. Let's go create our own event where we have investors and CEOs and entrepreneurs, and it's a festival of innovation and ideas. So that's how we built our business. So we never have to ask, do we need to do this or do that? Because we sort of, let's say, well, we're the ultimate end customer. So we're able to make a quick decision. So I think if you're the ultimate end customer of a pain point that you're figuring out to solve and building a business around, then God bless you, because I think that's you've just increased your chances of success tremendously. And if it's a huge pain point, even better. Number 3, developing awareness, situational awareness, self-awareness. Everything that comes out of your mouth, everything you do or say, people, there's a reflection. People interpret it, they process it. You're conveying something to them with body language or with words. So being self-aware allows you, again, to influence people a little differently, or a little, and it also allows you to mitigate risk, and it allows you to spot opportunities. So if you're in a negotiation across the table for somebody and you can read them and you're aware of what you're saying, the impact of what you're saying on them, you have an advantage. The same thing goes when you're recruiting people. You have to recruit somebody and they're considering a job offer from a competitor. So, being able to influence somebody by having self-awareness about what you're saying and doing is super important. So I would tell entrepreneurs, I think self-awareness might be, mental resilience and self-awareness to me are the two most important things to be an entrepreneur. And mental, I just said it, number 4 is emotional control. That's the mental part. That's the ability to get knocked down a lot and to keep getting up, and to never quit, and to never get too up and too down. So you have a great success, you don't want to get too excited because tomorrow there's going to be some kind of small failure, because that's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is all about putting out fires and solving problems on a daily and hourly basis. So having the ability to stay steady, and to, more importantly, to keep your team emotionally controlled and to keep them motivated is a wonderful skill to have. And again, that is something I think I urge you to develop. And the last piece is have fun. Life is short. Time flies. So if you're doing something you hate, I would suggest you get out of it like right away, because you're wasting time, which means you're wasting a big chunk of your life. So, we're all on this planet for a very short amount of time. So you may as well enjoy it while you can. Before I end, there's 2 events I would encourage you to attend. For those of you who are into biotech, on a Saturday, October 17th, we have an amazing biotech conference. You can see the Eventbrite link right there. And we will have hundreds, I think 250 or so biotech investors and VCs there, along with another 250 or so entrepreneurs and people who are interested. It is a US-China focused biotech conference, but a lot of the investors are from around the world. So they're American, North American, European investors, not just Asian investors. So it could be a good chance to learn something. We have great speakers and panels. And then Connectpreneur, I talked about earlier, we have no speakers, but we have 10 or so really awesome startup companies. And the networking there is fantastic as well. So with that, I will say thank you guys and open it up for questions. And this is my contact information, so feel free to connect with me. And if you have any questions, let me know. And of course, I'll make this presentation available to the organizers. So thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tien. That was an absolutely amazing presentation. For myself, I personally agree with all the pieces of advice you have just provided to our audience. And also, we have been in discussions with our participants and speakers about how the ecosystem, the business ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem works now in such difficult times of pandemics. So in light of this matter, would you be keen to share your plans to host your annual forum for entrepreneurs that you've just mentioned? Like what is it and how to join?
Right, so you're talking about Connectpreneur, right, Daria?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Connectpreneur in March went, we were going to do the event in Washington, DC at a university. We had 500 people signed up, and about 12 days or 10 days before the event, we were told that our venue was shutting down and they were canceling our event. So we pivoted quickly and we did research on a whole bunch of different virtual platforms, and we moved the event virtual. We moved it to Zoom, and we had a tremendous turnout. At the time, back in March, it was the last week of March, there were not a lot of large scale virtual conferences. So we had, I don't know, 400 people or so on. And in our meeting, everyone can see everyone else's name and they can communicate with each other on not just the group chat, but also on one-on-one private chats. So that was really cool. And we've done now 8 virtual events. And as a result, we've learned a lot. And we've also spread out our influence to international presenters. So we've had presenters from Israel, presenters from Canada, Mexico, Italy, and we have investors from around the world. So, you know, from Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South America. So we've had people dialing in from Brazil and Finland, even all over, to looking for investment opportunities and looking to network. So we're going to continue doing this monthly, even way after COVID is over. We will be doing monthly because we want to be able to reach that global audience. And we've been building our investor network. So we have a Connectpreneur investor network, and we've added several hundred investors from around the world to that group. And yeah, it's been pretty good.
Well, all the best to your event. So hopefully our participants will also join it, myself included. And now we have some Q&A coming from our participants. So I would first start with the question from Andre. That is, he's asking about smart money, I would say. So for example, if a VC can be a mentor or for an international entrepreneur to enter American market, like, what do you think?
Yes, there are many VCs in the US who invest in international companies for different reasons. I know many VCs who invest in China, in Israel, elsewhere. It could be a strategic reason where they want to support another portfolio company they might have, or it could be straight up return on investment. They love the entrepreneur, they love the market, or they love the technology. VCs generally are not good at market entry. You know, market entry is more for people who market entry being having the ability to take your product and sell it in a new market like the US, right? So taking a product that works in Russia and Americanizing it to the point where American companies will buy it, or American consumers, it's harder to do. Now, VCs are not good at that. Most VCs. So I do think that it is possible and quite plausible for you to get an investment from an American VC, even a European venture capitalist. But I wouldn't count on them to help too much with market entry. They will probably refer you to their friends who were channel partners at Cisco or channel partners at other large tech companies. But even those people, you know, I think market entry is hard enough for an indigenous company to sell to their own country. So for a foreign company to sell to foreign, you know, in a foreign market, I think, you know, it's very hard to do. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And so I believe that you said that you are focused only on investing in American companies, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So the second question, which has most likes here, comes from Aisilu. And she asks about the companies that are founded by women entrepreneurs and also immigrants. So how these companies are different towards the other companies that you invest in? Do they perform differently? In what sense? Do you have any examples maybe?
Thank you for the question. It's too early to tell if our thesis of investing in women, immigrants, and minorities is a winning strategy or not for us, right? Because it's too early. We've had good success investing in immigrant-led companies. We've had good exits. many. The research, okay, and again, I use research with a small r. The research shows that companies founded by women, immigrants, and minorities outperform companies started by white men. That is hard. It's very dangerous to look at research like that and draw conclusions because everything is specific to the situation, right? So, the macro feeling I have is that yes, this makes sense, but the micro reality is we don't have enough data yet. But I can tell you that the industry analysts would tell us that on a macro scale, that companies founded by women, minorities, and immigrants do better. So, why do they do better is a whole nother question that is unanswered, really. Everyone has an idea, a hypothesis, or a thought as to why. I do have thoughts myself. I think women-founded companies, the ones that I know, tend to have leadership that's coachable. I'm really generalizing now, but the top women entrepreneurs that I know are very good listeners, very good managers, and very good leaders. And I think that they also exhibit the ability to accept coaching and feedback very well. The other thing they do is they're not as ridiculously optimistic as some of their male counterparts. In other words, they're more reasonable when they're making forecasts, and they're more reasonable or realistic when they're sort of setting goals for themselves and for their companies, for their people. So I think that could be a reason why women entrepreneurs are superior or have done better in general, because there's exceptions to everything. And I think in terms of minorities and immigrants, I think they have overcome a lot. They've overcome systemic discrimination. They've overcome language barriers, culture barriers, educational barriers, the inability to join country clubs or get into the top schools or whatever. All that stuff could kill somebody, could drive them to zero, or it could make them stronger. And I think selecting those entrepreneurs that have survived, they've survived all this adversity, gives them a chance to accept the slings and arrows of entrepreneurship better than someone who has not faced as much adversity. So that's sort of my thinking as to why minority and immigrant-led companies do well. I think because the founders and the teammates they're tougher mentally. Yeah.
So hope that this answers this question and also gives inspiration to Aiselu to continue her business projects. So the next question comes from Vasily. And before I voice it out, I would like to say that as a bridge to that, some of our participants and speakers left their corporate life to start their new ventures and also have become quite successful. So the question goes, do you think it is worth working in a strategy consulting firm or a venture fund or maybe a corporation to understand the business from the inside before starting your own venture? So a piece of professional advice here is needed.
Yeah, my advice would be just to learn how to sell. Get a job doing sales, any kind of sales. You could be selling intangible products or tangible products, because that allows you to understand psychology better. And if you can understand psychology better, you're going to do great. I don't think you should work at a venture fund. Well, let me retract that. I think if you want to make money, yes, go to a venture fund, because if the venture fund does well, you'll rise up the ranks and you'll make a ton of money in the short run. I don't think that is but I think that working at a venture fund will not give you a broad enough view of business and reality of life. It gives you a view of what is it like to raise capital, what is it like to deploy capital, but you have no concept of dealing with pissed off customers or dealing with employees that are quitting or going out and trying to make a payroll. You really can't relate. I think the best investors, it's better to become an investor later after you've had a lot of business experience. Same thing for consulting. And nothing against consultants, but I think that it's great to go work at McKinsey or BCG or these consulting firms. You're going to get invaluable experience and you'll be successful no matter what. But if you had to choose, I would go work for a company that makes a product or a service and sells it and has to compete aggressively in a marketplace. That's where I think you can learn the most, depending on your level in that organization. If you're at a higher level, the better. If you're at a low level, it doesn't matter where you work. If you're at a lower level, the most important thing is a mentor or a boss. What can you learn from your boss, your immediate supervisor? Doesn't matter what company. If you have a great boss with a terrible company, you're better off than having a terrible boss at a great company. Because the things you're going to learn about life and business is really important. So I would say if you're middle to upper middle, take the job where you're going to develop the broadest, best business skill. And you want to be with an organization that actually makes something and sells something, as opposed to just dispensing consulting advice or deploying capital. That's just my opinion, Doc.
So we are very tight with timing, and I think we have only one question left. I will also try to rephrase it a little bit because, as far as I understand, Sergey wants to ask about investment strategy in an early stage company. So we are talking now about angels versus VCs. So it is commonly known that for an early stage company, the general strategy is to take money from an angel investor or maybe a few angel investors, not a VC. So are there any good VCs, so to speak, that could participate in the very early rounds of investment so that the founder would not lose control of his or her company?
Well, I think all people are good and all VCs are good. The difference is institutional VCs have customers too. Their customers are their limited partners. So the limited partners are demanding a return on investment. So their business, a venture capital fund's business, is to provide the highest return on capital to their investors. So this is a great question, by the way, because when you go and raise money, one thing I didn't touch on, you want to understand the motivations of all the parties involved. So the motivation of the venture capitalist is, I want to make a lot of money real fast so I can go raise my next fund. Okay, so they're looking at rapid returns. So they'll push you. So they'll be in a conflict position with you. So when you say good VCs, I assume you mean understanding patient VCs. And I would say no, they don't exist. Patient angels exist, understanding angels, kind angels, good angels, as you would want to say good, they exist. They're everywhere. Your friends, your families, we call it FF&F, friends, family, and fools. They're all great. They'll all write a check. They'll take a shot on you. They're not gonna beat you up if you miss your projections. But all VCs, they're not bad or good. They're doing their job. Their job is to get great returns for their investors, because VCs are not really investing a lot of their money. They're investing other people's money. So they have to take care of other people. Otherwise, they have no chance to raise a second or third fund. So a VC, their goal in life is to raise 10 funds totaling several $billion, right? So they're always looking to raise the next big fund, all of them. NEA, you just look, every single VC fund is always looking to raise the next bigger fund. In order to do that, they have to have a lot of home runs. So in order to get home runs, they have to push entrepreneurs beyond what's normal or reasonable sometimes. So my advice is, like I said earlier, institutional VC is investor of last resort. I would not take money from a VC unless I was pretty darn sure that I was going to be successful, or unless I really needed the money. So my advice is just go get more angel money.
Thank you, Tim. That's very insightful. And I personally will also use this advice for my company that is also fundraising at the moment. Okay. So thank you for being with us this morning. And we wish you a wonderful day. We hope to see you soon during one of your online events, and also to see you soon in our webinars. So we're now moving to the next slide.
Appreciate it.